No. That's if her mom.
Hello, Ben. Do you have everything you need on your end to for your session, or do you need me to do anything?
I think I'm fine. Hi, Mary. I think I'm fine. I've got my slides. I'm going to share my screen in a moment. I'll share with sound. I read through the FAQs. Everything was clear. So
Okay, perfect. Do you want me to give you any like 10-minute warning, 5-minute, or are you good?
that would be ideal.
Okay.
I'm gonna aim for that kind of 30-minute presentation, 15 Q&A. We'll see. It may not break down exactly like that, but I can definitely keep it within a 45-minute range. So
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
no problem. Thanks for coming, everybody. We'll start in just a couple of minutes here. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody. I am imagining that we'll have some more people coming in the next couple of minutes. But welcome to our presentation with English language programs. It's called The World is Your Classroom, Teach with English Language Programs. To give people a couple of minutes to continue coming in here, and also because we'd like to show kind of as close to firsthand as possible what this experience might be like, I'm going to start with a quick 5-minute video called A Day in the Life of a Fellow. So please watch along. We'll start the presentation after that.
My name is Sultan Stover, and I'm an English language fellow in Indonesia. My post is Ambon, Indonesia. It's the capital of the Maluku province, which is a series of islands far, far to the east. And that makes me the easternmost English language fellow in Indonesia. I've spoken to other fellows, and you know, there's just a lot of diversity in regards to your day as a fellow, and I think each one provides a very, very unique experience. For example, Indonesia, you know, it has large cities, and it has places like Ambon that are more rural and more natural, and I feel very, very lucky to be here. A typical day for me living in Ambon is maybe sometimes my counterpart will come before class and we'll talk about the day. He'll try to help me with my bahasa, and that's usually what will happen in the morning. Then either together or alone, I'll get on a motorcycle, which is actually a very new experience for me. It's actually a lot of fun riding a motorcycle through the city. I actually live on the opposite side of the island from where most of my classes are. And so I take the motorcycle, I take a ferry across the Bay of Ambon to the other side of the island where most of my classes are. Usually there's a lot of traffic on my way there, but when I get there, I just begin and teach my classes. Universitas Patimura has about 20,000 students. Most of the students are from the Maluku province. They come from all of the surrounding islands. The students of Umpati are actually very different from the students that I taught in New York. There's extreme eagerness to learn the language, as the understanding is that the greater your English capacity and the more English you know, the better your chances are at finding work and actually improving your social status. And so we actually have a great time. We go together in groups to sometimes have classes on the beach. Sometimes we go touring and they show me all the different wonderful places of Indonesia. And so not only have I developed a very fun relationship in regards to teaching, but also I've been able to have some great opportunities to get to know them. After teaching my classes at the campus Pegas Day, I usually stop for lunch at one of my favorite restaurants, which is the Room 88. They have this big white cooler, they open it, and there's fresh fish caught just that morning. And you actually get to choose which fish you want, and they will grill it up for you and serve it with a couple of sides. And it's actually really, really cheap, and it's actually really, really good. So I also work with American Corners, and American Corners is a library/event and presentation space in the university, and it's sponsored by the U.S. Embassy. There I do at least 2 presentations a month, basically on American culture, anything from holidays to music, anything that we feel is an important theme that the greater community would benefit from. In my spare time, there's actually a lot to do. One of the things I really enjoy doing is exploring the island. Usually after all my classes, after my day is done, the beaches are so close that I can just mosey on over and just sit and watch the sunset, relax, take a breather, and usually tell myself how lucky I am. I really have to say that this program is, I would say, the pinnacle for English language professionals. I can't imagine any other opportunity where you would have this much opportunity for professional development, this much actual hands-on classroom experience, this much time to actually create what it is that you would like to accomplish. I enjoy it so much that I've actually decided to renew. I was offered an opportunity to stay for another year, and I have accepted. And so I will be staying in Ambon.
Right. I always feel like that video hits especially hard in the winter months. But thank you everybody for joining us today. That's just one of many incredible stories that we'll be highlighting throughout today's talk. So if you're here for the presentation, The World is Your Classroom, Teach with English Language Programs, you're in the right place. We'll be talking today about our fellow specialist and virtual educator programs. Let me know in the chat if this is your first time at our presentation. And also feel free to give me a comment if you're an alum. I think we have at least one alum in the room right now. I'm not totally sure. Check the chat out. Yes, Nick, I thought you were a fellow. That's right. I felt like I'd seen you on our webpage. Well, hello, everybody. Fabulous. I will take any questions that people have throughout. I just want to say this before the presentation starts. Throughout the presentation, if you have a question, you can just leave it in the chat and I'll be looking through. Towards the end, we'll have a little bit of a question and answer portion where I can discuss those questions. Great, Ginger, you're in the right place. So if this is your first time and you want to learn about us, you are absolutely in the right place. So my name is Ben Taylor, and I am a marketing and outreach coordinator. I work most specifically with our specialist program. We'll be talking a little bit about that later today as well, but I really do see folks from all three of our programs. And I myself was a fellow in Kazakhstan from 2016 to 2018. I'll be talking about that in a little greater detail later. Okay, great. Welcome, Patrice. Oh, sorry, can I go back here? All right. So, just a word, I've got some notes to the side here. So if I ever start glancing off, that's not a glitch. I'm just kind of using my notes to help me here. So we'll talk about program goals first. English language programs places highly qualified U.S. citizen educators in the field of TESOL on projects funded by the U.S. Department of State to assist U.S. embassies in delivering English language programs and supporting public diplomacy and mutual understanding through cultural exchange. Fellow specialists and virtual educators are counted among more than 50,000 participants in State Department international exchange programs each year. So that broader umbrella includes things like Fulbright, includes things like any kind of exchange program, Tech Women, that brings aspiring STEM-based women and professionals from around the world to America for short exchange programs. Access, Education USA, there's this wide range of programs of which we are a small part. All English language programs participants benefit from the opportunity to form meaningful relationships and connections in a new culture, gain valuable cross-cultural work experience, and make a positive and life-changing impact on the lives of the people they meet and work with, as well as on their own lives. So, next screen, you can see here a map of all the different places where we operate. So this map shows the 130 countries that have hosted English language programs projects over the years, both in person and virtually. Virtual programming has made it possible to create projects in countries we haven't been able to work in before, allowing us to build relationships with more people in more countries. So there are places where we cannot get on the ground or we are not on the ground physically, and we have a great presence in a virtual capacity. All right. English language programs, as I've mentioned, includes 3 programs: the Fellow Program, the Specialist Program, and the new Virtual Educator Program. The Fellow Program's been sending TESOL professionals abroad for over 50 years, and the Specialist Program began over 30 years ago, and now has both in-country and virtual projects. The Virtual Educator Program is our brand new program. And of course, this is something that was inspired at least in part by the COVID-19 pandemic. So with a pause on in-country projects in 2020, the Fellow Program began offering virtual assignments. This initiative was so successful that it's now become a permanent program, the English Language Virtual Educator Program, which I'm happy to say is bigger than better than ever today. So altogether, there are about 3,000 English language programs alumni, and by the end of the current academic year, approximately 400 additional participants will complete their projects and become alumni. All fellow specialists and virtual educators are US citizens, have a graduate degree in TESOL or a related field, and are dedicated professionals in ESL and EFL. So now we'd like to share details about each of the 3 programs, and we will start with the Fellow Program. The Fellow Program offers in-country projects that last 10 months. Fellowships are full-time assignments with up to 20 contact hours per week. That'll be 10 hours for prep and grading and 10 hours for secondary activities and duties. This graphic kind of gives a rough overview of some of the many, many different kinds of things that a fellow can get involved with on a regular basis. So every fellow project is unique, but at the same time, projects share similar characteristics to varying degrees. At some time, every fellow will probably do all the things on this slide, and often at the same time. But of course, in every fellowship, how that looks and how that manifests may be slightly different. So every fellow has primary duties at their host institution that often involves classroom teaching of both language skills and methodology. Secondary duties give fellows a chance to work with teachers and students outside their host institution, often on projects of personal interest. And then public diplomacy or people-to-people connections can happen in big and small ways. So for example, attending a special event hosted by the Embassy's Public Affairs Office, or talking about your hometown with a neighbor. We'll see more examples of these kinds of activities on a later slide. Community projects often develop out of a fellow's personal interests while also meeting a need in the community. Many of these activities provide opportunities for professional development, from teaching a new course to giving a plenary for the first time. And finally, every moment as a fellow is an opportunity for cultural exchange while being immersed in the host community. While doing all these things, successful fellows are flexible, resourceful, and responsive to the needs of their community and host institution. So of course, one of the questions that comes up right away with any of these programs, really with any kind of exchange program, what are the benefits, right? So in-country fellows, these are people who are actually going abroad for that 10-month contract. They receive a $35,000 stipend for a 10-month assignment. These funds are deposited into a US bank account and are taxed. Every fellow receives a living allowance to cover lodging, food, and local transportation to and from work. The program also provides tickets for international travel to and from the fellow's country of assignment. And all Department of State overseas exchange participants receive a supplemental health benefits plan to cover emergencies, illness, or accidents in country. Program activities allowance is also provided, which fellows use to purchase educational materials and to support activities. This could involve subscription plans, applications that you want to share with folks who are participants in your activities, etc. Also, if eligible, a fellow may receive a taxed dependence allowance to assist with accompanying family members. Families do, if there's a question about this, I can answer it now. Families do come over. People bring spouses, they bring children. This is actually a pretty common thing. When I was in Kazakhstan, there was a gentleman on the other end of the country, to the south of Kazakhstan, who had 2 kids who came with him along with his wife, and they had a great time. Next, I'd like to talk about the specialist program a little bit. So English language specialists are highly experienced TESOL professionals who serve as high-level consultants for short-term English language projects. Specialists exchange knowledge, build English language teaching capacity, and establish partnerships benefiting participants, institutions, and communities in the United States and overseas. Also, it's been mentioned, but you can see it right here. There's a virtual component to some specialist projects, and there's also an in-person component, and then some projects are entirely kind of a hybrid nature, right? So they might have a little bit of both. So there's approximately, right now, 240 specialist projects designed by local US embassies, and that's the case every year. These projects may be in-country, virtual, or a combination of both. The in-person projects range in length from 10 days to 3 months, while virtual projects have no minimum or maximum duration. Specialists conduct needs assessment, collaborate on curriculum design, make plenary presentations, conduct intensive teacher training workshops, develop national testing tools, and advise ministries of education. ESP projects, English for specific purposes, are especially in demand to meet local needs. So for example, recently we've had great interest in projects related to climate change, disaster management, journalism, border security, and other critical areas. I'd be happy to talk about that later during the question and answer component if anyone does have a question about that. Program benefits again. These differ for in-country and virtual. So if you are an in-country specialist, there's a stipend for in-country projects of $250 a day. These funds are deposited into a US bank account and are taxed. The program provides allowances and supplements to cover everything from living costs to materials. That would include hotel accommodation, etc. The program provides tickets for international travel to and from the country of assignment And as with the fellow program, in-country specialists receive a supplemental health benefits plan to cover emergencies, illness, or accidents in country. For virtual specialists, the stipend for virtual projects is $50 an hour. These funds are deposited into a U.S. bank account and are taxed. And the program also provides allowances and supplements for planning and activity costs. I should also mention that in both cases, specialists are receiving, as are fellows and virtual educators, a year membership to TESOL Association. So you've got that as well. And now, just like we saw for a fellow, I'd like to give a nice look into the life of a specialist. We're going to see Paul K. Matsuda, and this is kind of part of his whirlwind tour, I believe, of Turkey here as a specialist. So here we go.
So today I'm going to talk about facilitating language development through writing. How many of you teach writing? Okay, great. How many of you have taken a class on classroom assessment? We actually need to have a really fine-tuned interval scale.
Make it more interesting and engaging, both for students and for ourselves. What do you think? How would you do it?
Kind of a short and sweet video. You'll notice with each of these videos, there's a website link. You'll get that link at the end, but it's a great place to go for other recent stories, adventures from fellow specialists and virtual educators. There's an excellent FAQ breakdown on the site and also an application timeline for people that are looking for an anticipated timeline if they were to apply. So highly recommend going to the website after this talk. All right, that brings us to our newest program and this lovely picture of one of our virtual educators with his esteemed furry colleague. Okay, and so I'd like to talk about the virtual English language educator program. So virtual educator projects are of varying lengths. Some projects may last for several weeks, while others may continue for an academic term or possibly longer. Virtual educators work in their homes or other personal spaces with their own equipment. Through the use of digital engagement tools, virtual educators facilitate communication across borders and assist in improving English language education around the world. These projects are an exciting way to expand on your experiences. Participants have a unique opportunity to develop skills that will enhance their TESOL careers. So, again, as we've done with the other two programs, we'll take a quick look at some of the different things that virtual educators do. Virtual educator projects are performed 100% online, as the name would suggest, and often involve classroom teaching of both language skills and methodology. Every virtual educator project offers an opportunity for cultural exchange by connecting Americans to classrooms across the globe. Virtual educator projects are designed by U.S. embassies to foster meaningful connections that strengthen relationships with people of other countries, and virtual educator projects provide opportunities for professional development. Program benefits. Virtual educator benefits include a stipend of $35 per contact hour, supplements for planning before and during the project, and an activities allowance. And so just like we've had the opportunity with the specialist and fellows programs to get a look from an alumni themselves, we're going to get a firsthand look here from Pearlie Lubin of what her experience was like as a virtual educator. So here we go.
My name is Pearlie Lubin, and I was a virtual educator in Costa Rica. There, I led 2 conversation clubs, one with Funded Tech Access high school students, and another with the students of the National Learning Institute. In addition, I led teacher training for some in-service teachers at the National Learning Institute. There were some challenges during my time in Costa Rica. One was definitely the weather. We experienced hurricanes, tornado, mudslides, and lots of heavy rain. But it didn't stop us, and the teachers would come back to class as soon as they got power again. Another challenge was definitely technology. For most, they had never been in a synchronous class before, and they hadn't taught synchronously before. So there were a lot of strategies, a lot of apps that we went through together, learned to use together very well. Another challenge is that the teachers in my course were those who did not pass a new entrance exam required by the National Learning Institute. So when they came into the classroom, they were somewhat demoralized, a little embarrassed for not being able to pass the exam. So I knew that one of my first duties was to create a safe space. I wanted the classroom to be a learning community and to let the teachers know that we were going to learn from each other. I confess, I wasn't the most well-versed in using Microsoft Teams. So one of the first things I did was to get together with a tech and learn as much as I could, as quickly as I could. And then I invited that computer technician to come into the classroom and help the instructors. So if they had any questions, the technician was there to answer, and just to make sure that we started on the right footing. So there was a lot for us to learn together. There were many highlights over the course of my fellowship, but I think one was definitely creating a safe space where the teachers felt comfortable saying, I didn't know, or I would like to learn how to do something. And I think that was really important for all of us. We learned together. Another highlight would definitely be the podcast on Padlet. The teachers designed their own scripts. They got their own intro music, their outro music. They decided who the host was, what the topics were going to be, and what they wanted to elaborate on. They did such a good job. What was great to see is that some are actually doing that project as well as others from the class with their own students. And they're sending me links to see what their students are doing now. So feeling rather proud of that. In addition, on the very last day of class, the teachers decided to surprise me. So they kept saying to me, do you hear a knock on your door? Do you hear a knock at your door? And I said, no, I don't hear anything. But I checked. And when I did, I received a bouquet of flowers, a card, and a balloon. I was truly, truly touched. I can't say enough about my time in Costa Rica and my time with the instructors at the National Learning Institute. If you are considering a virtual project, I would say be prepared to be immersed in a new culture, to be exposed to so many new things, and just to be able to do so from the comfort of your own home, that's just icing on the cake.
All right. And I saw in the chat, I'm going to check here again. Great, Nick. Let's see here. That's what's wonderful about a fellowship. You've got room to work with other programs while accomplishing your program's fundamental requirements and objectives. I completely agree, Nick. That was also my experience. It sounds like it was Pearlie's as well. And Mary, I'm thrilled to learn just now, Pearlie Lubin is apparently the president of Texas TESOL. That's just phenomenal. I had no idea we had that kind of connection going into this talk. So that's a wonderful thing. But yeah, you could follow Pearlie's example. She had a great experience as a virtual educator. She's still very active among our alumni community. Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. So next one, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk a little bit. Nick's comment was actually a nice segue here. I'm going to talk about my own fellowship for just a moment here. So I was in, as I mentioned, North Kazakhstan. I didn't actually say I was in North Kazakhstan, but that is where I was. Essentially Siberia. So very, very cold. I don't know if I have any fun winter picks in here, but -40, -50, not unheard of. School does close at that time, but I spent 2 years. I was in the capital city, which at the time was Astana, went through several name changes and is back to Astana for my first year. And in my second year, I was at a polytechnic university working with STEM-focused teachers and students in Karaganda, which is kind of an industrial city, also in North Kazakhstan, but about 4 hours drive away. So what we see in that first picture, that's actually from Karaganda. My second year as a fellow, I was teacher training. So a big part of what I did, and I should mention my fellowship came right after I'd gotten my master's degree in teaching English as a second language. And so I was pretty green as a teacher. I was pretty new to the whole thing, certainly working on this level. The idea of teacher training was at first kind of daunting and scary to me. But those professional development opportunities that present themselves during a fellowship, this is one place where I can really identify that being the case for me. I ended up really having these great communities of practice at both universities where I worked with the teachers, and that was a highlight of my experience. This middle picture is one of my secondary projects, and Nick mentioned American Spaces in his comment. This was actually with Education USA, which was another partner organization that we had in Kazakhstan. And I worked with high school students who were writing admissions essays for application to universities abroad. And so this was actually kind of about the application process. I told them about where I was an alma mater, which, Knox College in Illinois, which is where I currently am right now in Illinois, and Humboldt State University in like very, very Northern California. But I had a great time talking with them and getting to play kind of like that first fellows video that we saw, getting to play a little bit mad scientist with my lesson plans. I got to experiment. I got to try new things. And I think that was a very exciting part of my fellowship experience as well. That third picture there, that's me working with Access students. These are high school students, generally between the ages of 14 and 18, who are learning about American culture and are learning English along the way, having a lot of fun. This was a summer camp focused on business English. And here we're learning how to read business cards and kind of go through the procedure of showing proper etiquette when receiving business cards. So that was fun. But a big part of my fellowship, and one that I certainly was not ready for because I had nothing in my past that would have suggested that this is where we were headed, I got really into acting. I worked a lot with the public affairs section of the embassy to develop educational videos for social media and local news outlets. And this culminated in getting 2 shows my second year. So one was on local TV and radio. That's what you see at the bottom there. It was kind of on the bottom left. It was an English dialogue show where we had 2 live English language learners, and they really were language learners who were also staff at the studio. And then this woman, Valentina, who was a TV host on the channel, and myself, we would kind of teach and have sort of a live classroom setting, and people could call in with questions and comments. So that's what's going on down there. And then I had another one designed specifically for Instagram. That's what you see in the middle. It's called Banglish. I wish I'd come up with that name. I'm not that clever, but the network that I was working with, they came up with this concept, and each one of those videos is probably 1 or 2 minutes long, dealing with idioms. Those came out on Instagram for the months after I was a fellow. So I was able to kind of continue making an impact on the local English language learning community after leaving as a result. In that top picture, the gentleman in the gray shirt kind of standing up smiling, that's obviously me on the bottom. This was a video that we made for a holiday coming up, Independence Day in Kazakhstan. This gentleman went on to become probably the premier romantic comedy director in Kazakhstan. His name's Kanagat Mustafin, but at the time he was pretty young in his career. And this happened just a couple months after I started my fellowship, so that was fun too. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And I would be remiss here if I didn't show at least some video that we had created. So kind of to show a little bit of the kind of the soft cultural exchange, if you want to think of it that way, between America and Kazakhstan. A lot of what we would do is explain American holidays through the US Embassy in kind of a video format on our social media channels and networks. But sometimes it would be me participating in a local holiday, a locally relevant holiday that Americans don't know too much about. This video in particular went really viral. And when I say that, I mean, it had upwards of 40,000 views. It was shared on a number of TV networks. My in-laws, I ended up marrying while I was in Kazakhstan. We've since moved to America and are living now here in Illinois, but my in-laws at the time were like, we think we just saw your husband on sports TV to my wife. So the whole thing got rather crazy, but this was a fun video to make. And so without further ado, here's a video celebrating Nowruz.
Nowruz kutlu olsun. We're about to play some games to celebrate the traditional holiday of Nowruz, one of the biggest holidays of the year in Kazakhstan today. Now, we're gonna pull the rope. Now we'll play Kazakhsha Koreas, which is Kazakh wrestling. Stop, you win. Now, we're going to play Asik. This is a really hard game. Yeah! Well, that's hard. It's been a long day. This has been Taylor. Nowruz kutlu olsun. Sabonis.
Stuff like that. It was a really fun, kind of unexpected aspect of my life in Kazakhstan. If you had told me that that's what I would end up doing, I would have said you were crazy. But now there we are. So just moving right along here. Professional development during and after assignments involves there's orientation, a community of practice, which is actually one of the unsung and I think probably most underrated benefits of being a fellow specialist or virtual educator. You have this fabulous network of alumni that you can pull resources and opportunities from. TESOL Global Professional Membership, as I mentioned, online community events, training courses, master classes, conference grants. You're a part of the International Exchange Alumni Network, and there's also other exclusive opportunities for participants and alumni as well. So for eligibility for any of these, as we mentioned earlier, all English language programs participants are US citizens with a graduate degree in TESOL or a related field. All projects require a depth of experience that comes with many years working with both language learners and teacher trainees, and applications should clearly demonstrate this. The specialist program has an expanded list of eligibility requirements and preferred qualifications. We're generally looking for people with at least 10 years of professional experience at that point. So please visit our website at www.elprograms.org for more information about this and any other questions you may have. This next slide is a really nice kind of cross-sectional look at our three programs. So during the application process, applications are accepted only through the program's online portal. You can access that from the website. Each program has its own application, and our website provides a detailed outline of what you'll need to submit. We always recommend that applicants give themselves plenty of time to complete the application so you can save and return to any section before submitting. For the fellow program, the application's for the following and not the current academic year. For the virtual educator program, the application for the upcoming cycle begins in March and then stays open for new applicants till early winter. So if we do the math there, there's a new application window opening for virtual educators very soon, probably within the next 6 weeks or so almost. And for the specialist application, you apply just once and can apply at any time. So that one, you would apply once, and then we do encourage people to update their application every 6 months or so with new publications, plenaries, anything else that they've been involved in. So after you apply, your application will go through a rigorous multi-step review. Okay. And that gets us to a question and answer component. So we've given you a lot of information today and hopefully inspired you to consider applying sometime in the future. More detailed information can be found on our website, and you see it on the screen there, but I will also write it in the chat in just a moment. That's www.elprograms.org. And while you're there, you could sign up for our newsletter to receive program updates, timeline reminders, and links to stories. So also please follow us on our social media channels. And that gets us to the question and answer component. of our presentation. Thank you very much for joining me. You're welcome to stay. I'll be here for the next, looks like about 10 minutes. I think I've taken a little more time than I should have possibly for my presentation, but I'm happy to be here for any questions you might have. Okay, so here's a question. Besides being shorter term in general, how are specialist projects different from fellowship? That's an excellent question, Nick. And so on the one hand, there's an easy way to answer this, and on the other hand, there's not an easy way. And I want to speak to the way that this is difficult first, which is that every project, regardless of whether it's fellow, virtual educator, or specialist, truly is different from every other project around it. Like even within a country, Nick, I'm not sure where you were as a fellow, but even when you're with myself as a fellow in Kazakhstan, the other fellows in Kazakhstan had entirely different lives and experiences than I did. But I will say this. Okay, you were in Moldova and Armenia. That's fabulous. I had a great time in Yerevan at one point on a visa trip. Specialist projects, how are they different? Well, first off, they are shorter, of course, as you've mentioned. They tend to be of a higher, you're working on a higher level of visibility in some way. So that may involve plenaries. That may involve teacher training or development of assessment tools with the Department of Education. That's going to involve possibly teacher training a law enforcement group or something like that. Something where the implications of that go far beyond a university or a handful of classrooms. Not to say that what fellows do is not important, it certainly is. But this is working at an elevated scale where it's a very high impact project that probably is going to impact all sorts of people for a long, long time to come, many of whom the specialists may never actually have the opportunity to meet. So it's not always the case, but I would say that's a major part of what you see in specialists. I will say this also, if you go to our website, and again, I'm going to write it here. I should have put the www. I think it probably makes it immediately. I think if you just copy and paste that, you'll get there. If you go to the stories section of our website, you'll actually be able to see a really nice cross section of various, you know what? I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to take us there. I'm calling an audible on this. Give me a second here. I'm going to share my screen and I'll just take us to the website right now. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So here, if I go to elprograms.org and I go to stories, you'll see a really nice cross section of various stories. So here's a fellow in Vietnam, virtual educator who was just functioning in El Salvador, specialist story out of Vietnam. I actually just wrote this story last week, got it published. So, and here's an alumni in Kazakhstan. Okay, so you get a nice breakdown of stories. You can also search by region, country, participant type if you want to see the kinds of things people are doing. So, great. Thank you, Mary, for a hyperlinked version of our site. That's great. And I see that I have about 6 minutes left here. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer. And if you prefer, you can speak. I'm okay with that as well. I'm keeping an eye on the chat, so if anyone writes anything, I'll have an eye there. But I want to show you some other features of the website, since I'd highly encourage anyone interested in our programs to check this out afterwards. If you go to the Who We Are section, you'll get a little bit on our history, information about who to contact. So you've got different email addresses. This is that newsletter you can sign up for, and you can actually mark which programs you're interested in. Okay. If you go to the fellow program, you get a nice look at what fellows do, the benefits, and this is all broken down just like our presentation, and also stories from the field. Okay. Specialists, very similar, right? And with each of these also, there's a really great look at the application process. This will actually give you the qualifications necessary, all of that. Okay, how do you submit? And with all of these also, here's virtual educator. If I go to FAQs, get a really nice breakdown of a lot of, maybe not every question you'd have, but a lot of the questions you might have. As a virtual educator, what would a typical day look like in general? It's a fabulous question. I would say it differs per person. It'll be less heavy of a day in the sense that it would be for a fellow. The contact hours per week are not as high. So I would say this is one thing. You could do it from the comfort of your home, like Hensley is here. And so, you know, you might wake up, I will say, you might have to wake up at a time that is not, you know, a normal classroom time for us in the United States, because you're probably working at a time that is amenable for both you as a virtual educator and your students who may be somewhere else on the other side of the world. And so that's a component of it. You're probably working with teachers, you're working with counterparts in some sort of plan. You might be working with the RELO, that's the Regional English Language Office in that region, trying to determine the best way to get about whatever teacher training, plenary leading, whatever you might do. But again, there's such a vast array of projects. There's a really great project from a couple years ago in Cuba that I always think of as being such a great example of a virtual educator project, because first off, it was in Cuba where we don't have people on the ground, but also it was a dialogue and public speaking class using as a basis WhatsApp, because that was a tool that was actually accessible easily in Cuba as well as in the United States. And so it was a really interesting project, kind of with some groundbreaking implications too. So a lot of fun. But that's maybe kind of a non-answer, Nick, but that's how I would say that. Yeah. I probably got time for one or two more questions. I'll plug a few more things on the website. The news and events section. This is where we get anything, anybody who's been in the news lately. We have a number of kind of celebrities, both major and minor, in our alumni circle. So Peter Sokolowski, just as an example, this gentleman works for, and in many ways is the face of Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and is actually currently working a spelling bee in Egypt right now. So that's extremely cool. A lot of stuff like that. And also the stories section. Let's see the chat here. Projects are designed and assigned by Embassies. Yes, this is great. So what Embassies do, the Embassies don't actually create the project in and of themselves. Embassies are working closely with counterpart institutions, whether that's a university, could be a law enforcement agency, a Department of Education. The list goes on and on. There's as many different counterpart organizations and partner institutions as there are projects. But essentially what happens is that partner institution communicates with the embassy, who then kind of work together to build and develop this project. And then once the project's built, we look at the, the embassies look at the list of available applicants, and it's effectively like fishing, or finding somebody who's a good fit, and offering them the opportunity. So, yeah. That being said, and I think Nick mentioned this in his comment earlier, there is a fair amount of leeway once you become a fellow specialist or virtual educator to kind of introduce your own ideas, methodologies, and activities. So a lot of opportunity there as well. Thank you very much, everybody. This has been a lot of fun. I've never actually been to Texas outside of, I guess, Bush Airport. So it's really fun to touch base and talk with everybody. And thank you very much. In Kazakhstan, I would say rahmet, but I'll just say thank you here. Thanks, everybody. Look forward to seeing you on the website. So, bye.